One of these games is not like the other. One of these games is fake. So howdy there, Young and Silver Mongoose here. I just want to share probably the best bootleg Game Boy Advance game that I have seen. Usually when you see them, it's pretty darn obvious that it's fake. You know, there's really glaring flaws, like they'll have spelling mistakes or something. But I got one the other day, and it fooled me for a little bit. So out of all these games, it's actually Final Fantasy V here. Now, typically, whenever you look at a Game Boy Advance game that's pirated, it'll have the wrong cover. So it'll have like the art that's on the box. And this one's fine. This is actually what it looks like. It actually says Nintendo, and has everyone, has the correct code down here as well. And then also has the Nintendo seal of quality, has the Game Boy Advance logo engraved in there. So when you look at the cover, it looks perfectly fine. I put it into my Game Boy Advance, and there was no save file on it, which to me kind of raised a red flag, because there's not much of a reason for that unless somebody deleted all the files, which often doesn't happen with used games. You buy a used game and it just has the old person's file on it, but this one had no file. And that kind of makes sense in Game Boy Color games or Game Boy games, because a lot of those had batteries. Most Game Boy Advance games do not use batteries to save. Some of them have batteries for things like keeping internal time, but there's very, very few that have batteries in them. So I thought maybe the battery died, and if the battery died, then perhaps it's not real. So I started looking closer at it, and then there were a few telltale signs. So I'll compare the things that usually you look for. Like first off, I said you look for the cover. The cover looks pretty good, but if you compare it to this Tactics here, look at how clear that Everyone and Nintendo is. And then if you look here, you can see that the Everyone and Nintendo is a little bit blurry. It may be hard to see on the camera, but it is a little bit blurrier. And then also, if you compare the font on that Game Boy Advance to that one, it's actually different. And probably the biggest thing is that all the text is a little bit thinner, and the little end on the G there is actually looks a little bit different as well. So make sure you check out the font. Another thing is, if you look here on this curve right there, this is actually completely smooth. And then if you look on this one, you can see that there's a tiny little bump right on the edge. It's not, if I turn it a bit, there you can see the bump there. That bump will not be on the real one, so this was not made as well. The other thing about the cover is, if you look at any Game Boy Advance game that is official, you will see right there, so you can see 34. There are numbers stamped into the cover in all these games, even though there's weird ones in here. You know, there's a Fairly Odd Parents one, there's Drill Dozer, Yoshi, NES Classics. All of those have some sort of number stamped directly into the cover, and there's none of that in there. The cover otherwise is really nice. It's nice and glossy, and it's stuck on right. If you look at the back, another thing that people look for is that the screw is a tri-screw, like that, and it was in here, but I did take it out. If you look at the back there, the font looks a little bit off. Typically when you're looking at a Game Boy Advance cart that's pirated, it won't have the right model number here, so it'll say like AYG003 or something, or it won't have patent pending, made in Japan, or some of them actually say Nintondo instead of Nintendo, but it actually says all those things. The difference is the font. You can see the font on Nintendo, again, is a little bit off. It's kind of hard to compare them, but you can see that the Nintendo one just looks wrong because it's thin. Another thing is the circle right here is much bigger than the circle on this one. Now, if you open it up, if you have the right equipment and you can open up your cart, you'll see, oh, what do you know, there's a battery. Now again, that does not mean it's pirated, because there are some games that have batteries in them, but typically the official ones have orange here instead of yellow. And then another thing that people look for is if there's stuff down here. And there is. It says Nintendo AGB E0141. You can actually look at these without, you can kind of see in there, without actually taking it off, but I wanted to get a really close look at it. Now the issue with this is, again, the Nintendo logo looks a little bit off, the font is wrong, and then AGB E0141 is actually a common code that's used for pirated Pokemon games. So this is a code that's typically used for pirated games. And then also, sometimes when people look in here, there's a ridge. There's no ridge there, so again, it's a very good pirated one. Now if you look right here, there's nothing right there. And then, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but if you look inside the actual one, you can kind of see there's some writing right here on the official one. So overall, this is the nicest pirated game I've ever seen. The cover is very well done, the code is correct, it has all the right text on it, it has the right screws, it has almost the right casing. Everything on the cover, or on the surface, looks great with this pirated game. I'm very impressed. The thing is, with looking for pirated games, as time went on, they kept improving the things that people typically looked for. So even if your game has the right cover, the right code, the right logos, it may still be pirated. So you can look for the smaller signs, like the ridge there, the right font, make sure that's the correct code, the font on the back there, and then the real telltale sign will be the code on the inside. If it's E0141, it's more likely than not a pirated one. So I just wanted to share that with you, and maybe that'll actually help some of you guys find out if your games are pirated, if you suspect that one is pirated. This has been Silver Mongoose Videos. Remember, classic gaming never gets old.